I've been tracking global capital flows for 15 years, and what I'm seeing right now keeps me up at night. $8 trillion. That's the number that should terrify every Western investor. China has systematically repositioned $8 trillion of assets in the last 24 months. Not adjusted, not rebalanced, repositioned. And if you understand what that means, you know we're past the point of no return. My name is Marcus Caldwell. I'm an independent market analyst. And today I'm going to show you a pattern that's repeated itself 3 times in modern economic history. Same sequence, same stages, same devastating outcome, every single time. The terrifying part? We're not in the early stages anymore. We're deep into stage 3. And most investors have no idea what's coming. Let me walk you through something historians don't talk about. There's a 4-stage cycle that plays out whenever a rising economic power challenges an established empire. It's happened throughout history, different nations, different centuries, but always the same pattern. Stage 1 is mutual dependency. 2 economic powers become deeply intertwined through trade. Money flows freely between them. Both nations prosper enormously. Politicians celebrate the partnership. Economists write papers about permanent cooperation. Everyone believes the relationship is unbreakable. Stage 2 is silent accumulation. One side begins building strategic advantages while the other grows comfortable. The rising power accumulates reserves. The dominant power accumulates debt. Power shifts quietly beneath the surface. By the time it's obvious, it's already too late to reverse. Stage 3 is strategic separation. The rising power realizes they've built sufficient leverage. They start diversifying away from the dominant currency, building alternative systems, creating parallel structures, preparing for independence. They do this quietly without announcements, while maintaining the appearance of normal relations. Behind closed doors, they're preparing for economic conflict. This is where we are right now. Stage 4 is controlled collapse. The rising power deliberately triggers the crisis. They weaponize the dependency they spent decades creating. The established empire can't respond effectively because they're trapped by their own debt. Economic dominance shifts without a single military confrontation, and the old power never recovers. Now let me prove this pattern is real by showing you the historical evidence. 3 separate occurrences, same sequence every time. Britain and Germany, 1900 to 1914. Britain was the undisputed global superpower. The pound sterling was the world's reserve currency. London was the center of international finance. The British Empire seemed permanently invincible. Germany was industrializing rapidly, building manufacturing capacity that rivaled Britain's. Trade between the 2 nations was massive. Both countries were getting incredibly wealthy from the relationship. Stage 1 was firmly established. British newspapers wrote about eternal peace through commerce. Politicians declared that economic ties made war economically impossible. Then between 1900 and 1910, Germany made a crucial strategic shift. They restructured their foreign reserve strategy, reduced British pound holdings by 60%. That's not portfolio adjustment. That's fundamental repositioning. They accumulated gold instead, thousands of tons, building continental Europe's largest gold reserve. They developed trade relationships with Russia, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, creating an alternative economic sphere outside British influence. Stage 2 confirmed. Power was shifting beneath the surface. By 1912, German financial institutions were privately discussing economic warfare strategies. We have the archived documents, meeting minutes from Berlin banking conferences. They were planning to weaponize gold flows, planning to trigger bank runs in London, planning economic warfare 2 years before military conflict began. Stage 3 was complete. The weapon was built. August 19, 14, World War I begins. Everyone focuses on the military campaigns. They completely miss what happened financially. Germany immediately froze British assets in German banks, recalled gold from London, triggered a massive liquidity crisis. The Bank of England nearly collapsed in the first week of war. Not from military defeat, from financial contagion. Britain had to suspend gold convertibility just to survive, had to secure emergency loans from the United States. The pound sterling never recovered its dominant position. Within 30 years, the dollar replaced it as the world's reserve currency. Stage 4 delivered exactly as the pattern predicted. Before I show you the next historical example, I need you to understand something critical. If this analysis is valuable to you, subscribe to this channel right now and activate notifications. This channel exists to provide you with the financial intelligence that mainstream institutions don't want widely distributed. Independent analysis like this doesn't happen without your support. Your subscription directly enables this work. Now let me show you how this pattern played out on an even larger scale with even more devastating consequences. America and Japan, 1950 to 1990. After World War II, America rebuilt Japan as a trading partner. The relationship appeared mutually beneficial. America imported manufactured goods, electronics, automobiles. Japan gained access to American consumers and capital markets. Both sides prospered tremendously. Stage 1 was solidly established. Deep interdependence with massive bilateral trade flows. But starting in 1960, something changed. Japan began accumulating dollars systematically, not just earning through trade, accumulating massive reserves. By 1985, Japan held over $300 billion in U.S. currency reserves and treasury bonds. That's enormous leverage. Japanese companies bought American real estate. Rockefeller Center in New York, Pebble Beach Golf Course, Columbia Pictures. Americans viewed it as wealthy businessmen buying trophy assets. It wasn't investment. It was strategic positioning. Stage 2 confirmed. Then in 1985, the Plaza Accord was signed. On the surface, it appeared to be international currency cooperation. The reality was completely different. Japan used their accumulated leverage to force America to devalue the dollar. This wasn't cooperation. This was a demonstration of power. By 1987, Japan was openly preparing for a post-American economic order, building Asian trade networks, creating yen-based settlement systems. Stage 3 in full motion. October 19th, 1987. Black Monday. The worst single-day stock market crash in history at that point. The Dow Jones dropped 22.6% in one day. Over $1 trillion in market value vanished. Was it random panic? No. It was triggered by coordinated selling from Japanese institutional investors. Massive liquidation of American assets. All at once. They attempted to collapse the American financial system, and they nearly succeeded. America survived only because the Federal Reserve intervened with unprecedented liquidity injections. But the message was crystal clear. Japan had the power to devastate American markets whenever they chose. Stage 4 attempted. Japan proved that economic warfare is more effective than military conflict. China was watching, learning, taking detailed notes. Now let me show you the most recent example, the one that reveals exactly what's about to happen. Europe and Russia, 2000 to 2022. After the Cold War ended, Europe rebuilt economic relationships with Russia, massive natural gas agreements, oil imports, trade integration. Germany became completely dependent on Russian energy. 65% of German natural gas came from Russia by 2015, Italy 50%, Poland 40%. The entire European industrial base running on Russian energy. Stage 1 locked in. European leaders gave speeches about how energy partnerships created lasting peace, how economic ties prevented conflict. They were repeating the same fatal error. But Russia was building leverage systematically. Between 2000 and 2020, they accumulated over $600 billion in foreign reserves. They reduced dollar exposure systematically, increased gold holdings by 300%. Russian state banks created alternatives to SWIFT, the Western payment system. They built SPFS, their own financial messaging network. They coordinated with China on cross-border payment systems. Western analysts dismissed it as insignificant. They were catastrophically wrong. Stage 2 verified. Between 2020 and 2022, Russia made specific strategic moves, restructured debt obligations, diversified reserves away from Western currencies, built economic relationships with Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. They were preparing for separation, for sanctions, for economic warfare. Western intelligence agencies saw the military buildup near Ukraine. They completely missed the financial buildup everywhere else. Stage 3 confirmed. The trap was set. February 2022. Russia invades Ukraine. The West responds with the largest sanctions package in history. Western leaders declared immediate victory, predicted Russia's economy would collapse within weeks. Then something shocking happened. Russia didn't collapse. The ruble crashed initially, then recovered within months. How was that possible? Because they had prepared for years, built alternatives to SWIFT, diversified reserves. Then they triggered Stage 4, turned energy into a weapon, cut gas flows to Europe strategically, just enough to maximize pain and leverage, triggered an energy crisis, drove European inflation to double digits, the highest in 40 years. German factories shut down, not because of bombs, because of no energy. They weaponized economic dependency, exactly as the pattern predicted. Europe's economy has been damaged for years, potentially decades. Industrial production down 30%, energy prices up 400%, all without Russia firing a single shot at a European target, all through economic warfare. The pattern works every single time. 3 historical examples, 3 different time periods, 3 different nations. Identical pattern, identical sequence, identical outcome. And now China is running the exact same playbook, but bigger, more sophisticated, more devastating. Let me show you what's happening right now. Stage 1 was completed between 1990 and 2010. 20 years of foundation building. America opened trade with China after decades of isolation, made them the world's factory, outsourced manufacturing, transferred technology, built integrated supply chains. Trade exploded from billions to trillions annually. American companies moved entire industries to China. China accumulated dollars in massive amounts, became America's factory and America's banker simultaneously. Everyone got wealthy. The relationship seemed permanent and mutually beneficial. Deep interdependence established. Stage 1 complete. Stage 2 started around 2010 and accelerated through 2020. 10 years of accumulation and leverage building. China accumulated $3 trillion in foreign reserves. $3 trillion. They became America's largest foreign creditor, larger than Japan, larger than all of Europe combined. But they did something more strategic, something more dangerous. They built a parallel system, an alternative structure, a replacement for the entire Western economic order. The Belt and Road Initiative, announced in 2013. Over 150 countries participating now, $1 trillion invested. Creating trade routes that bypass Western systems entirely. Roads, ports, railroads, pipelines, all using Chinese financing, Chinese currency, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, created in 2016, competing directly with the World Bank and IMF. Over 100 member countries now. The digital yuan launched in 2020, a central bank digital currency that can bypass SWIFT, bypass Western sanctions, bypass the entire dollar system. China wasn't just trading with America. They were building the replacement. Asymmetric accumulation complete. Stage 2 verified. Stage 3 is happening right now, 2022 to present. And this is where it gets absolutely terrifying. In the last 24 months, China has restructured $8 trillion of their economic position. $8 trillion moved, repositioned, restructured. Let me break down exactly what that means. They've reduced U.S. Treasury holdings from over $1 trillion to under $800 billion. That's a $200 billion reduction in just 2 years. They're systematically selling American debt, quietly without causing immediate panic. Yet, they've increased gold reserves by 70% officially. Official numbers claim they hold 2,000 tons, but unofficial estimates from commodity traders suggest 5,000 tons or more. They're buying every available ounce of gold, accumulating secretly. Why? Because they're preparing for a gold-backed currency system, a direct challenge to the dollar's fiat dominance. They've signed currency swap agreements with over 30 countries, bilateral agreements allowing direct trade in yuan instead of dollars. Russia, massive swap. They now trade entirely in yuan and rubles, no dollars involved. Saudi Arabia buying oil in yuan now, not dollars. Brazil, direct currency swap for bilateral trade. Argentina, UAE, Pakistan, Thailand, all bypassing the dollar, all creating alternatives, all preparing for separation. They've created CIPS, the Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, a direct alternative to SWIFT, processing billions in transactions daily. In 2022, CIPS processed 100 trillion yuan. In 2023, 150 trillion. That's a 50% increase in 1 year. This isn't experimental. This is a functioning alternative ready to replace SWIFT when Stage 4 triggers. They've been stockpiling critical resources at unprecedented levels, oil reserves at all-time highs, 200 days of supply, strategic metals, copper, lithium, rare earth elements, grain reserves at record levels. They're preparing for disruption, for sanctions, for separation, for economic war. But here's the most important move, the one that reveals the timeline. November 2023, China ordered all state-owned enterprises to divest from Western markets within 3 years. All state-owned enterprises. Complete divestment. 3-year deadline. That's a mandatory order enforced by the Chinese Communist Party. $8 trillion of Chinese institutional money currently sits in Western stocks, bonds, real estate, private equity. All of it must be liquidated by November 2026. $8 trillion moving out. That's not risk management. That's preparation for total separation, for economic war, strategic repositioning verified. Stage 3 confirmed. We are deep in Stage 3 right now, the preparation phase before the attack, and Stage 4 is coming, not might come.
will come. The only question is timing. And we know the timeline now. 2026. That's when the divestment completes. That's when they're ready. Here's what Stage 4 looks like when China triggers it. Pay attention because this is specific. China will execute 3 actions simultaneously. First, they'll dump U.S. treasuries. Not the $200 billion they've sold quietly over 2 years. The remaining $800 billion all at once in a coordinated sale. The bond market crashes. Interest rates spike instantly. The Fed faces an impossible choice. Let rates spike and cause immediate depression, or print money to buy the bonds and cause hyperinflation. Either choice destroys the system. That's the weapon. Second, they'll trigger a supply chain crisis deliberately. China controls 60 to 90% of critical manufacturing. Semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, rare earth elements, batteries, electronics. They won't cut off exports completely. Instead, they'll restrict them strategically. Export licenses required, processing delays, all creating shortages, panic, price spikes. They'll show the West exactly how trapped they are. Third, and this is brilliant, they'll offer an alternative, a new system. UN-based trade settlement, no dollars required, CIPS instead of SWIFT. Digital yuan for international transactions, gold backing for credibility, and dozens of countries will accept it. Not because they want to, because they'll have to, because the dollar system will be in crisis. This is Stage 4, the controlled demolition, the collapse of Western financial dominance, the end of dollar hegemony, not through military force, through economic warfare, through weaponizing dependencies they spent 30 years building. The pattern predicts it. History confirms it. The preparation is visible. The timeline is set. Inevitable. Now here's what everyone gets wrong. The comfortable lies people tell themselves. Lie number 1. This time is different. China needs America as much as America needs China. Wrong. Catastrophically wrong.
Germany needed British trade in 1914. They went to war anyway. Japan needed American consumers in 1987. They attacked anyway. Russia needed European energy revenue in 2022. They weaponized it anyway. Economic interdependence doesn't prevent conflict. It creates the conditions for economic warfare. China's been building alternatives for 15 years. They don't need the American consumer anymore. They're ready for separation. America isn't. Lie number 2. The dollar is too big to fail. Wrong again. The pound sterling was the reserve currency for 150 years, until it wasn't. Reserve currency status isn't permanent. U.S. debt at 124% of GDP, $34 trillion and growing. They're printing trillions, debasing the currency, weaponizing it through sanctions. Every time America freezes assets or cuts countries from SWIFT, they demonstrate exactly why the world needs an alternative. China's building that alternative right now. The digital yuan processed over $250 billion in transactions in 2023. That's a functioning competitor. Over 40 countries are now testing digital yuan systems for trade. The dollar's dominance is ending, not in theory, in practice, right now. Lie number 3. America can respond. This is the most dangerous lie. The response time is too slow. The dependency is too deep. Look at Europe and Russia. When Russia cut gas flows, could Europe respond effectively? No. They couldn't replace the energy fast enough. They just suffered. America has the same problem. China controls the supply chains, controls the manufacturing, controls critical resources. If China triggers Stage 4 tomorrow, can America replace Chinese manufacturing quickly? No, not in years. Semiconductors take years to fabricate. Pharmaceutical supply chains take years to rebuild. You can't just move it overnight. The military doesn't help. You can't bomb your way out of a supply chain crisis. Technology doesn't help when the semiconductors are made in Taiwan. Economic power doesn't help when your economy is built on debt, and your creditor is your adversary. The response options are limited. The pattern is unstoppable. Here's the reality nobody wants to face. Stage 4 is coming. Will come. The pattern is absolute. The sequence is inevitable. China is positioned. America is vulnerable. The timeline is set. 2026, mark it. That's when everything changes. Every day that passes, China accumulates more leverage, builds more alternatives. Every day, America adds more debt, deepens more dependencies, until the moment China decides the timing is optimal, then they'll trigger Stage 4,
and Western markets will collapse. Will collapse. This is pattern recognition based on 3 historical examples with identical outcomes. So what do you do? How do you prepare? How do you position yourself? How do you survive what's coming? Let me give you the actionable steps. First, understand the timeline with absolute clarity. China ordered complete divestment by 2026. That's your window. That's your countdown. Between now and late 2026 is the absolute maximum danger period. Could be earlier if geopolitical events accelerate the timeline. Could be slightly later if they need additional preparation.
But that's the range. That's the kill zone. That's when Stage 4 most likely triggers. Second, reduce exposure to assets that depend on Chinese manufacturing or dollar dominance. Most Western stocks are exposed.
Most bonds are exposed. Real estate in major cities is exposed. When China triggers Stage 4, these assets don't correct. They crash. Third, position in assets that benefit from economic separation.
Defense contractors explode when conflict emerges. Domestic manufacturing, reshoring creates massive opportunities. Energy independence, food security, gold, and hard assets. Fourth, diversify away from pure dollar exposure. Not all at once, not panic selling, but strategically, methodically. Build positions over time. Gold, the ultimate crisis hedge that's held value for thousands of years. Bitcoin, the decentralized alternative to government currency that can't be frozen or seized. Foreign currencies from neutral countries that won't be caught in the crossfire. Swiss francs, Singapore dollars, Norwegian krone, hard assets outside the American financial system. Real estate in stable jurisdictions. Productive farmland, physical commodities you can touch.
Fifth, and this is critical, prepare for supply chain disruptions practically, not just financially. Medicine, stock up 3 to 6 months. Electronics, buy now before prices spike. Critical supplies, secure it before the crisis. These aren't predictions. This is pattern recognition. Positioning before it's obvious. Before the panic. The insiders are already doing this. Central banks are diversifying reserves.
Buying gold at record rates. Billionaires are moving money. Private equity liquidating Chinese positions. Smart money is leaving U.S. equities. Hedge funds buying protection.
They understand the pattern. They're positioning for Stage 4. The question is whether you will too. Because here's what happens to people who ignore the pattern, who believe this time is different. They lose everything. Everything. The Dutch merchants holding tulips, wiped out overnight. The British investors holding pounds, destroyed in months. The Japanese real estate speculators, lost decades of wealth.
The European manufacturers dependent on Russian gas, crushed in a year. All of them believed the system was stable. All of them were wrong. All of them learned the pattern the hard way. The pattern doesn't care about beliefs. It only cares about mathematics, leverage, timing, preparation. And right now, the mathematics favor China. The leverage is with China. The timing is China's choice. Stage 4 is coming. The $8 trillion move is done. The positioning is final. The trap is set. What happens next will reshape the global economy, destroy Western financial dominance, transfer wealth and power from America to China, end the dollar era. Not through war, through economics, through the same pattern that's worked 3 times before, through inevitability. The only question is whether you'll see it coming, whether you'll position for it, whether you'll survive it, or whether you'll be another victim, another person who ignored the pattern until it was too late. History is screaming the answer. The pattern is revealing the answer. China's $8 trillion move will collapse Western markets. Will. The sequence is set. The stages are clear. The trigger is ready. The countdown has begun. What you do in the next 12 months determines the next decade of your financial life. Subscribe right now. Hit that notification bell. Turn it on. Because I'm preparing a detailed follow-up analysis. Part 2 is coming. And in Part 2, I'm breaking down exactly which sectors collapse first, which specific assets survive the collapse, which countries actually benefit from this crisis. The precise week-by-week timeline of how Stage 4 unfolds. I'm identifying the specific stocks, the actual ticker symbols that explode when reshoring begins, the exact commodities that spike when supply chains break, the particular currencies that survive when the dollar fails, the specific moves you need to make and when. Because what's coming will change everything. Everything you thought you knew about investing, about building wealth, about financial security, everything you believed about the American economy, about dollar dominance, about global trade, Everything you assumed about the future, about stability, about safety. The people who understand the pattern, who see what's coming, who position correctly will be the only ones left standing when it's over. Everyone else will be wiped out.
The collapse is inevitable. Your response is optional. Choose wisely, position correctly, act decisively. Time is running out faster than you think. This is Marcus Caldwell. Stay informed, stay prepared, stay ahead of the pattern.